It's time for the whole 9 yards. Hello again, everybody. Ralph Ventre here, ready to go for week 6. Yes, hard to believe, but we're almost halfway home. Week 6, and it's a special week 6 because the Northeast Conference Football's ESPN 3 package will kick off this Saturday, October 10th. We'll talk more about that later on in the show. Just a quick overview. 6 teams in action. St. Francis is on the bye week. 2 out-of-conference games and 2 Northeast Conference contests. Let's dive right into this action. It's time for the No Huddle preview. We start our No Huddle march up the field with the first of 2 out-of-conference contests on the Week 6 docket. This one features a pair of New York City inhabitants who are both gunning for their first victory of the season. It will be the first ever meeting between the Wagner Seahawks and the Columbia Lions. It'll take place right up on the Hudson River at Columbia's Baker Field under the lights Saturday night. What to expect from this matchup? Well, Columbia at 0-3, coming off a 10-5 loss. Yes, that score is correct. A 10-5 loss to Princeton in Ivy League play. In that one, the Lions proved a bit vulnerable on the ground. That could bode well for Wagner's Matthias McKinnon and Brandon Peoples. The two-headed rushing attack got things going last week against Robert Morris. Although it didn't necessarily translate into points, McKinnon and Peoples both showed great burst at Hamline Field. Another nugget about this matchup, Wagner head coach Jason Hotaling is not in any way unfamiliar with the Columbia Lions or their head coach Al Bagnoli. Coach Haas, as he is affectionately known as on Staten Island, was the offensive coordinator for Ivy League member Cornell back in the 2013 season. Then, Columbia head coach Al Bagnoli was the head man at Penn. Well, Coach Haas's Big Red team beat Penn that year, and they also handed the Columbia Lions a loss. So Coach Haas knows the Ivy League, and he and the Seahawks are making the short trip uptown to try to break into that win column Saturday night. Catch it on the Ivy League Digital Network. The second non-conference matchup will unfold on the Bluff, Rooney Field in Pittsburgh. It's homecoming for Duquesne University, and the Dukes will look to thrill their homecoming crowd with a big performance against Division II member Alderson Broaddus. Alderson Broaddus is no stranger to the Northeast Conference. Wagner and Duquesne both posted victories over ABU in the 2014 season. In particular, Duquesne with a 48-27 win despite playing the game with their backup quarterback. As of course, Dylan Beekle, who will be in uniform Saturday, missed a number of weeks last season due to injury. And it seems like we talk about him every week, but every week he's doing big things. And that's Duquesne wide receiver Chris King. He caught a touchdown in last year's win over Alderson Broaddus, and he enters Week 6 leading the Northeast Conference in both receptions and receiving yards. So be sure to watch Chris King, Dylan Beekle, and the rest of the Dukes homecoming weekend live, NEC Front Row, Saturday, October 10th. And now we move down the docket to the conference contest. They all count, but these games have a little extra meaning when a conference title's up for grabs. We'll start with the NEC preseason favorite Bryant Bulldogs. They will continue actually complete their 4-game road swing in New Britain, Connecticut when they take on the CCSU Blue Devils. It'll be the NEC opener for the Bulldogs. The host Blue Devils, on the other hand, they lifted the lid off the NEC schedule last week at Duquesne. CCSU, which fell 27-10 to the Dukes, will look to get that sour taste out of its mouth and even up its NEC record before a homecoming crowd at Jack Arute Field. For the second straight week, the CCSU defense will be asked to contain one of the top receivers in the Northeast Conference, quite frankly, one of the more explosive receivers in the football championship subdivision. Last week, cornerback Javon Elmore and company went up against the aforementioned Chris King. We told you how he leads the NEC in receptions and receiving yards. Well, this week, the Blue Devils defense has to keep Chad Ward in check. Numero Ocho has over 300 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns thus far in 4 games as a senior. It was his touchdown reception that proved to be the game winner over Ivy League member Brown in week 2. And then last week, he snatched one out of midair and went over 60 yards for the game-tying score at Big South member Monmouth. So CCSU does not want Chad Ward to get behind that defense. In terms of Bryant's mindset heading into this NEC opener, the preseason favorites are 2-2. After a 2-0 start, they've dropped road contest at national number one, Coastal Carolina, and then the aforementioned Monmouth. Head coach Marty Fine has seen some good things from his Bulldogs, but they aren't quite where he wants them to be.
We had to go back on Sunday, talk about the last one, learn from it, and get better from it. But we got to get on to the next one because we have better things coming. And I promise everybody that we will be better.
So there you have it, a promise from head coach Marty Fine. He and the Bulldogs will get to clean the slate this week. They'll go up against a hungry Central Connecticut team, both teams looking for that precious NEC victory. We'll have it live. Where else? NECFrontRow.com. And the final matchup in our No Huddle preview, it's the NEC FB on ESPN3 Game of the Week. Sacred Heart heads to Robert Morris to kick off the NEC's ESPN3 package. From week 6 through the remainder of the season, there will be at least one featured NEC game per week on ESPN's multi-screen live platform. The road game will serve as the NEC opener for the 2-time defending league champion Shoe Pioneers. The trip to Moon Township is sure to conjure up some positive memories for the Pios. After all, it was in November of 2013, during what was essentially an NEC championship game, where Sacred Heart went into Joe Walton Stadium and knocked off Robert Morris to secure the program's first conference crown in more than a decade. Now, if Sacred Heart wants to take the first step toward a three-peat come Saturday, they will have to do it against a stingy Robert Morris defense, arguably the most improved defensive unit in the football championship subdivision. Robert Morris has captured 4 of the season's first 5 NEC Defensive Player of the Week awards. 2 of those have gone to the sensational linebacker Mike Stokovic. He's the reigning honoree after 11 tackles in last week's NEC opener, a 9-6 victory over Wagner. Stokovic leads a run defense that is allowing an NEC low 3.1 yards per carry this year. This is one season after the Colonials finished dead last in run defense. The pass defense hasn't been shabby either. Colonials rank 3rd overall in that category amongst Northeast Conference leaders, and they'll certainly have their hands full on Saturday with Sacred Heart wide receiver Tyler Doobie. The 5th-year senior is the NEC's active leader with 32 career receiving touchdowns. He has found pay dirt 5 times this season. That's also good for the NEC lead. So mark your calendars right now. 12 noon Eastern Time, October 10th, NECFB live on ESPN3. Paul Dottino, Kevin Gilbride, and John Schmelk will be on the call. It'll be the 2-time defending champion Sacred Heart Pioneers, fresh off a bye, against the Robert Morris Colonials, who are riding high after a big win over Wagner. And everybody should know what time it is right now. Of course, it's time for the Twitter Timeout. In this weekly segment, we feature a top NEC-related tweet that has been floating around out there on social media. This week, it comes from Antoine Eddy. NEC football fans should certainly recognize this name. Eddy was a star cornerback for the Robert Morris Colonials and also earned All-America honors as a junior return specialist, set a Robert Morris record in 2013 for single-season punt return yards. Anyway, as you can see, Eddy misses NEC football. He misses his buddies at RMU, but he's still keeping tabs on his old team, and he's been rather impressed. So I'd say, yeah, Antoine, you're right on, dude. When you hold your opponent to 2.9 yards per play, limiting them to just 170 yards in the entire game, yeah, the defense is getting it done. Good to hear from NEC alumnus Antoine Eddy. No huddle preview? Check. Twitter timeout? Yep, we got that one too. What's left? X's and O's. It's this weekly piece where we shine the spotlight on a prime offensive performer, and then we turn it around and give some love to a top defensive player. We're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. When you're watching this week's NECFB on ESPN3 Game of the Week, you want to look out for Jackson King. Yes, everyone talks about Tyler Doobie, and rightfully so. Doobie has plenty of all-conference credentials, NEC's active leader in career touchdown receptions, but don't be fooled. He's not the only talented pass catcher in that Sacred Heart arsenal. There's Moses Webb, of course, and then there's our man, Jackson King. The last time out against Dartmouth, King had 6 receptions for 100 yards, the first time he reached the century mark in his career. And Jackson King does appear headed for a breakout season in Fairfield, but he's not actually an unknown. He's made a couple key catches earlier in his career, most notably this big one to seal a win over Patriot League member Lafayette last fall. What a grab by Jackson King. And now to the defensive side of the ball. He will also be on the field during Saturday's featured matchup on ESPN3. It's Robert Morris safety Ryan Richards Jr. In addition to one NEC Defensive Player of the Week award, Richards has 3 interceptions to his credit this season. He's intercepted a pass against 3 different opponents. 19 total tackles. He can come up, stop the run, drop back in pass coverage. The complete safety, Ryan Richards, a key reason why Robert Morris's defense sits near the top of the Northeast Conference rankings. And that will do it for our Week 6 video preview show. 2 non-conference contests, 2 NEC matchups, one of them the featured matchup on ESPN3. As always, I'm Ralph Ventre, and it was my pleasure to bring you the whole 9 yards on Northeast Conference football. I will see you next week right here again at necfrontrow.com.